The topic of our conversation is regarding love. I would like to remind you that we utilize our own psychological platform, and in order to familiarize yourself with its details, please watch lecture number 1. And now we will have a discussion about love and what it can be like for each of the psychological accentuations. I remind you of the difference between psychological accentuation. The first one will be a Nazi. The second one will serve as our border guard, and the third one will be specifically designated as the empath. How is the arrangement of the inner world of these three psychological accentuations structured? This region will serve as the location for our upcoming construction. Let us make the assumption that three individuals with varying psychological accentuations possess an equivalent size neocortex. What's the difference between them? And it's here, in the limbic and prefrontal regions of the brain. What will our narcissist look like? The narcissist will have a minimal amount of activity in the limbic region of the brain. The border guard will possess a greater amount of empathy than the empath, as they experience emotions with much more intensity. And the empath will possess an average volume that is occupied by the limbic part of the brain. And the reptilian part of the brain, this is our limbic system. This is our neocortex. This is the reptilian part of the brain, an ancient region responsible for basic survival functions and instincts. The narcissist will have the biggest part in the reptilian section of the brain. Large, attractive bodies. Individuals who are able to consume nearly anything and rarely experience weight gain. Bodies are in close proximity to perfection. The reptilian part of the brain in a border guard will be less developed, but more developed compared to an empath. Empaths will possess a considerably smaller amount of resources as a result of the fact that the limbic system is capable of developing in this particular area of the brain, thereby occupying certain spheres that are associated with the reptilian part of the brain. I remind you, merely movement, reaction, physics, that is all that is connected with the necessity of human life. It will be situated in this place. So, what do we obtain? From the perspective nearer to the mean, naturally, the influence will be merely larger than that of the typical individual, since this is the limbic portion of the brain. The RCM will be a bit smaller because it occupied part of its space. The border guard will have an extremely large limbic system. It's absolutely insane. They feel 10 times more, and such a quantity of emotions. They are such sensitive individuals. And RCHM individuals frequently encounter numerous fears, uncertainties, and apprehensions, and they possess readily accessible physical bodies that are prepared to promptly react and offer protection for their well-being in this current life that they are living on this planet known as Earth. Yes, there is a question. Tell me, this is somehow related to biology. Because you say Narcissus, in theory, if we talk about how it is arranged in biology, it is ectomorph. The border guard is a mesomorph. This is average. An ectomorph struggles to gain weight. Well, and in particular, that's how it happens. If I know people like ectomorph, mesomorph, and so on, they usually have similar psychotypes. This is a cool topic. I think we need to have a separate lecture on this issue because, of course, there will be a lot of parallels here. And the more parallels we see, the more cases our theory describes, because our platform is so simple and convenient to use that many people will see a reflection for themselves, what it can be applied to, and what this knowledge can be used for. So, I reminded us how the fundamental scheme of differences between the narcissist borderline and the empath is arranged, and now let's move on to how they love each other and which types are better suited to each other. And what hormones do they adhere to? Because these are fundamentally different models of love. And who suffers at what moment, who enjoys at what moment, you will discover in this video. So, at this particular moment, we will demonstrate to you on this diagram how love is structured in these three distinct accentuations. We will take colored sticks for this. They will help us understand better who loves whom and how. Here are different colors. We will now choose colors to make it clearer and better perceived. Well, let's start with something simple. Empath meets empath. And oh yes, it will be the most evenly long love. How will it be different? At first, she will experience relatively weak emotions, but over time, their love will be built upon the hormone oxytocin, which is commonly known as the love hormone. This hormone works for a very long time. This is the hormone of long happiness. This is the hormone of stable relationships. And when individuals embrace one another, naturally, everybody claims it is oxytocin. We will create extended happiness and joy in a pink hue. Here is one impact of happiness. And the second empath is also happy. Two empaths experience oxytocin happiness. They can live with each other for a long time and happily. They have no items for conflict. They understand each other. They care about each other, about their psychological comfort, which is very important. They are diametrically opposed. We will first consider what happens to narcissists if they meet each other, and it so happens that they are somehow attracted to each other. In the majority of instances, it will be an exceedingly complex relationship, linked to the adrenaline addiction of both individuals who are in love. The fact of the matter is, narcissistic love is typically founded on the rush of adrenaline. Remember, this is the largest reptilian part of the brain. It is associated with narcissists. And she's enjoying it at the moment when adrenaline is released. She can count on him, she can. She takes up the largest amount of pleasure and happiness. This is the kind of pleasure that two magnificent athletes can experience by communicating with each other. There will be certain challenges that arise between them due to the geographical distance because naturally, the narcissist desires to establish a connection with an empath as they are fundamentally contrasting personalities. The empath possesses a more developed limbic region of the brain, whereas the narcissist has a less developed one. The narcissist psychologically endeavors to encounter the empath in order to awaken it within himself. Additionally, the empath perceives an underdeveloped Olympic system in the narcissist and attempts to naturally facilitate his healing. Empath appears in the form of such a savior. He desires to save Narcissus and enhance his Olympic system. Therefore, there will be some complexity in these relationships. The difficulty will be directly for the empath, because everything will be fine for the artist. He wants to receive this saving energy from the empath. And if empath also watched various videos and movies in childhood where empaths should suffer, give away everything he has, forgive and believe in a happy ending. This can be a lengthy story, however. For an empathetic individual, this love will not be solely oxytocin-based, as in the case of two individuals with empathic accentuations, but rather, love with empathic and narcissistic accentuations will be primarily based on the release of adrenaline in the body. Let's sign it now so that we can commence matching which hormones occur in which locations. Here we have adrenaline, and here we have oxytocin. So, oxytocin, adrenaline, but besides adrenaline, here also appears another neurotransmitter called norepinephrine, in addition to the previously mentioned ones. That is precisely what provides pleasure. Adrenaline triggers the entire body. The body is prepared for anything, but the exhilaration of love that is derived from norepinephrine. And here the same thing occurs. When an empath encounters a narcissist, we obtain a relationship that is founded on adrenaline. Additionally, norepinephrine. How will an empath perceive and experience emotions in these particular relationships? He will experience a sense of sadness, and the narcissus will be in a quite good condition in these relationships. Now we place it in this manner. Narcissus is pleased and satisfied with the outcome of our actions. He experienced the most amazing event in his life. He came across his victim, whom he is extremely fond of. Also obtains some pleasure. However, she obtains pleasure not from oxytocin but from adrenaline. But she doesn't understand that it's an adrenaline happiness. There is a concept of adrenaline addiction or adrenaline rush. Because the hormone norepinephrine appears, which obscures empathy, mindfulness. And we have a very sad empath and a very happy drug. Let us see what will be in this square. And here will be the same. Here we have an empathetic person. Let us enroll a greater number of men and women to enhance understanding. In this particular location, we will have men, and in this specific area, we will have women present. It transpires that we have a narcissistic woman, and she is content because she engages in communication with an empathic man. Let's see how the reverse couple will be arranged when the man is a narcissist and the woman is an empath. All will stay the same. So in this case, the narcissist is a man, and he is very happy that he met a very empathetic woman who understands him deeply. The hormonal background of such love will be exactly the same. Adrenaline plus something else, norepinephrine. In other words, essentially the victim is in a state of euphoria and does not perceive what is happening to them. Adrenaline combined with norepinephrine. Now let us witness the unfolding of events as the narcissist comes face to face with the border guard and see what transpires next. We have an egotistical man in a romantic relationship with a woman who exhibits accentuation of borderline personality traits. Both will be relatively comfortable. With what is it connected? Can you provide more details about the connection and the level of comfort? These couples are characterized by a high level of stability. This stability is attributed to their functioning in parallel with hormonal processes, as the love experienced by a border guard is influenced by the neurotransmitter dopamine. Now let's consider the situation when a narcissist encounters a woman with borderline accentuation. What will not occur? Both of them will be comfortable in their communication with each other. First and foremost, it is possible that a border guard may exhibit narcissistic traits or qualities. Narcissists will perceive a person within himself who bears a striking resemblance to him. For Narcissus, this will create a sense of comfort, as the projection of the border guard embodies both empathetic and narcissistic qualities. I remind you that if you compare from the perspective of quanta, then it's a quantum state, a person with both such accentuations and such accentuations. Let's even mark this. We will measure the state of the limbic zone. Here she will be one for a simple model. In this scenario, we will encounter 0 in one case and both 0 and 1, which represent the state of quantum superposition, in another case. Since the boundary is inherently flexible, it is well suited for both situations. The primary hormone responsible for regulating the boundary, influencing its feelings of love and happiness, is dopamine. These will be dopamine relationships. For a border guard, a certain level of stress, a certain level of nervousness is important, exactly the same as it was in childhood. And he will take into consideration love and brighter relationships once the level of dopamine surpasses its level during childhood experiences. Thus, he will be completely comfortable with the narcissus, which will somehow increase this level of comfort and enhance it with the release of dopamine. Here we will note that a man encountered a female border guard, and both of them are in good health. So, let's have a look now. Now the female border guard will meet another border guard. It will be challenging here. Here we will have two individuals who exist at an extremely high level of anxiety. And it will be extremely challenging to be in each other's company with such accentuation being a prominent factor. It is important to note that something very similar occurs when a narcissist is combined with another narcissist. The presence of two individuals with identical levels of coldness or a high development of the reptilian part of the brain makes it difficult for them to get along with each other. In this situation, there are two accentuations and two psyches in a heightened state, which can be likened to a small atomic bomb. It is worth mentioning that dopamine plays a significant role in both cases, as it contributes to the intensity of the situation. Dopamine. Next, for simplicity, we will utilize the letter D as an abbreviation for dopamine. Adrenaline, norepinephrine, this is adrenaline, and we will put O on oxytocin. Let's see what happens when a border guard meets an empath. This will, of course, not be such a challenging situation, because for an empath, of course, he would genuinely desire oxytocin by nature. However, the accentuation of empathy can exist on both dopamine, and what is known as dopamine attachment can be formed and established in the brain. These roles have the potential to be incredibly interesting, and he can easily find himself falling head over heels in love with the unique charm and beauty of this state. And then he starts to encounter a different type of love. Look, in this scenario, an empath experiences situational love when two empathic accents come together and connect. When an empath encounters borderline accentuation, it can be incredibly painful for them, even from a long distance, but they will still experience a sense of happiness due to the release of dopamine in their brain. The moment for him is completely new, so he can become extremely attached to it. That is the reason why we will designate a highly joyful long-distance empath who is capable of enduring the difficulties associated with borderliness. However, on long distances, for a person with borderline personality traits, for someone who emphasizes their borders, it will undoubtedly result in unhappiness. The reason behind this is that the meeting, particularly in the case of a border woman and an empathic man, triggers a surge of this new hormone that is crucial for empaths. It signifies an upward trajectory. And he's like, oh, life has become more interesting than it was. Something new is definitely very difficult, but he can endure, he can show care. He will maybe even try a little to heal the border guard so that he can come back to normal. But the border guard will get bored over time. And of course, in a long pair, it will be very difficult for him here, specifically for a border guard, because the dopamine level of the border guard will constantly decrease. Here's what's interesting, how nature is arranged. The brightest emotion for a border guard will be at the moment of meeting, and everything else will be more boring, more boring, more boring. And then he is compelled by nature to end these relationships and enter into a new one to find a newer, brighter level from which his emotions will also fall. For instance, look, we'll write here, this is a story about dopamine. Here the couple switch to the hormone dopamine. In this case, with oxytocin, it is a constant growth hormone, so it remains a highly stable structure throughout the process. Here, the amount of time it takes for the DOFA to grow can be exactly as long as it takes for it to fall for the border guards. People move in opposite phases, and that's why they feel uncomfortable here. Both of them will experience a gradual rise in adrenaline over time, as they will be causing different levels of discomfort to each other. And you can become bad precisely because of this. What a lot of adrenaline, it has a negative impact on long-term relationships. When two border guards meet, dopamine will also decrease over time as they interact with each other. They will make each other uncomfortable. They will actively seek out bright emotions in order to restore their level of love, their level of happiness. So they will need to increase their hormonal level. Okay, let's fill it in now. We have a total of 2 missing squares. Let's now take a look. We had an instance where there was a man named Narcissus and a woman working as a border guard. At this moment, we will have a male border guard along with a female Narcissus. This is also a relatively stable structure. We reflected it here. In principle, nothing has changed. This can potentially be a fairly long and stable couple. In the case of a narcissist, he will experience his adrenaline-fueled emotions, while the border guard will reside in a parallel space dominated by dopamine. They don't compete, no one imposes anything, it's a parallel existence. So, we have an additional story left. It is about an empathic woman who meets a border guard man. This story is the final one in our collection. The identical story, solely at this moment it is the reverse circumstance for us. Presently our border guard is a male individual and a female will initiate the process of attaching herself to something that is novel and different from before. And in her situation, it will be a pleasure caused by dopamine. In this case, the level of dopamine will increase in a woman. We'll leave the woman here. And here, there'll be a man. Here, dopamine drops, so the border guard's alerted. The man becomes upset, feels that he needs to depart, end the relationship, demolish something and continue with his life. And here we will sign, yes, that we had a border guard here. On the contrary, there was a woman, she gets upset, but a man, on the contrary, he gets used to these swings over time and starts to exist effectively in them. Here, friends, please, is a picture of love for you. Who with whom? How happy. Here, as much as you want certain experiences, you now understand the logic. You have everything for everything. You need to determine your identity by emphasizing your strengths and select the area in which you wish to test your abilities. In every square, all individuals can discover fresh experiences, novel sensations for themselves. such that something is better than something else. You should decide for yourself. This is your life. This is your decision. We provide a platform that will enable you to make your conscious decision regarding what kind of love you prefer, experience it, compare it, and analyze it thoroughly. Here is the information I wanted to share with you today. Please download the Soulmatcher app to find your accentuation. It is important to make sure you are not mistaken, so check the accentuation of the people around you. Practice with them to understand which accentuations suit you best and determine who you like more. Thank you for your attention. Each accentuation also possesses its own degree. By modifying the degree of accentuation, by acknowledging that you and your partner also have a degree of accentuation, you must understand that this will lead to a slightly different attitude and approach. For example, the accentuation on the 7th level and the bordering of the 7th level will work a little differently from the 10th, and the experience will be a little different if the narcissism of the 7th level of accentuation and the bordering of the 7th level. That's why this is your life. Now you know how to study, try, test, enjoy, and most importantly, build stable couples, because there is nothing better than a couple that can enter into long-term, stable relationships, get to know each other better, and live in stability, harmony, and mutual understanding. And what is the comfort of a border guard and a narcissist? Why are they together in every way? Narcissus is the epitome of the underdevelopment of the liminal system. He fails to perceive the border guard within an individual. He observes nothing in the border patrol, the identical nothingness as he possesses. He also perceives zero in empathy. However, if a narcissist starts a long-term relationship with an empath, he makes an effort to turn him into a zero, completely devoid of empathy. And here comes a great pain for an empath. His limbic system is being devalued. He feels bad. He's in pain. Studying the narcissist-border guard relationship reveals a slightly different dynamic. Narcissus perceives Narcissus in the border guard, yet the border guard, because of having a limbic wall in a state of quantum superposition, does not need to eliminate the unit to zero, as it remains in a state of indeterminacy until observed or measured. He can do it this way or that way. Therefore, the narcissist doesn't notice the difference at all. He assumes that the empath is talking to him about something that he doesn't understand and starts correcting him, attempting to create a single zero. Additionally, there is a 0 and 1 present, if you please. During the time when the border guard is experiencing empathy, they may feel slightly uneasy, but they will transition calmly to a state of empathy deficiency. And he will observe in the narcissus a person who is comfortable enough with himself, operating based on a similar logic of decision-making. The difficulty arises when people going out as a couple don't understand the logic of action. They say so, but he behaves irrationally. From the point of view of a person who sees the problem, yes, but from the point of view of someone who doesn't see the problem, he thinks that he is behaving rationally. And we talked a lot about it in lecture number 1, when we talked about the principles of forming irrational behavior and which parts of the brain a person uses to come to completely different conclusions, completely different solutions in the same situation. In short, border guards can live happily with a narcissist and empaths. On the board, you can read it like this, but life is much more interesting and diverse. Here I would like to remind you that we utilize ideal states 0, 0, 1, and 1 in our process. In reality, there exists a tremendous number of accentuations and situations where individuals discover long-lasting and comfortable relationships. We have provided you with a model to comprehend the kind of experience and which hormones you will acquire by choosing a specific type of accentuation. How can you shoot a border guard? Great question. Look, one of the solutions, there will always be many solutions. As an illustration, a border guard comes across a cool empath. Our border guard is a man, and they commence a relationship. And if the border guard understands his borderliness, what it is, then an excellent solution for him may be to overcome the addiction to dopamine and make a shift to oxytocin, which can be highly beneficial for him in the long run. A border guard takes his beloved woman by the hand. He went to a psychologist before and explained to experienced psychologists what he is doing, and with the help of behavior correction, he begins to reduce the level of dopamine that he needs to be happy until he removes it to zero and switches to oxytocin. And there you have it. We now have a border guard who has transformed into a truly remarkable and compassionate pair of empaths. They both became very empathetic people. The border guard's lymphatic system has stabilized. It no longer malfunctions. It does not switch. Cool oxytocin happiness.